The evening air was cold when Daniel parked his old pickup near the small roadside diner. He was a man who had spent years working alone, driving from town to town, fixing fences and repairing machines. He never stayed long anywhere. He liked quiet roads and open skies, but lately that silence had begun to feel heavy. He had no family left, no home waiting. He just worked and moved on. That night he had stopped only to drink coffee and rest his tired eyes. Inside the diner the lights were dim, and only a few people sat in silence. A soft country song played on the old jukebox. Daniel sat near the window, rubbing his rough hands together. That was when the bell above the door rang and two figures stepped inside, a young woman holding the hand of a small girl. They both looked cold and lost. The woman's coat was too thin for the wind outside, and the girl's shoes looked worn. Daniel noticed how the woman tried to smile at the waitress, asking politely if they could sit even though she seemed nervous. The waitress nodded kindly and led them to a corner booth. The girl climbed onto the seat and stared at the menu like it was something special. Daniel watched quietly, his coffee untouched now. Something about them made his chest tighten. Maybe it was the way the woman looked around like she didn't belong, or how the girl held her hand like she was afraid to let go. A few minutes later, Daniel overheard the woman asking softly if they could share one meal because they didn't have enough money. The waitress hesitated but nodded with a kind smile. Daniel felt his throat go dry. He had seen plenty of hardship in his life, but this, seeing two people trying to hide their hunger, made him feel something deep in his chest. He got up slowly, walked to the counter, and paid for their meal without saying a word. He told the waitress not to mention it, but when the plate of food came, the little girl's eyes lit up like Christmas lights. The woman looked around, confused, then noticed Daniel sitting quietly at his table. She mouthed, "Thank you," and he gave a small nod before looking away. The girl began eating fast, giggling between bites while her sister smiled softly, trying not to cry. After a while, Daniel saw them preparing to leave. The woman helped the girl put on her tiny jacket. As they passed his table, the little girl stopped suddenly. She looked up at him with her big brown eyes and said, "Mister, my big sister is perfect for you. Please take care of us both." The diner went silent for a moment. The woman turned red with embarrassment, trying to hush her little sister. Daniel didn't know what to say. He managed a small smile and said gently, "That's a big thing to say, little one." The girl just grinned and said, "You bought us food. Only kind people do that." Then she took her sister's hand again and they walked out into the night. For a long moment Daniel sat frozen, her words echoing in his mind. He had no reason to care, yet something inside told him not to let them walk away. He quickly paid his bill, grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The cold air hit his face as he spotted them walking toward the edge of town, where an old bus station stood. He called out, "Miss, wait a minute." The woman turned, surprised. "I didn't mean to bother you," she said nervously. "My sister just says things sometimes." Daniel shook his head. "She didn't bother me, You two have somewhere safe to stay tonight?" She hesitated before answering. "The shelter is full. We'll stay at the station until morning. We'll be fine." But Daniel could see in her eyes that she wasn't fine. He sighed softly. "Look, I know how the road feels when it's cold. I've got a small cabin outside town. It's safe and warm. I'm not trying to bother you, but you both shouldn't be out here tonight." The woman looked unsure, clutching her sister's hand tighter. The little girl peeked from behind her, smiling at him. "See, I told you he's nice," she whispered to her sister. After a long pause, the woman nodded slowly. "All right, just for tonight." The drive to Daniel's cabin was quiet. The heater made a soft hum as the little girl fell asleep in the back seat. The woman finally spoke. "Thank you for helping us, sir. My name is Clara, and this is my little sister, Lily. We lost our parents last year. I've been trying to find work, but it's hard." Her voice broke a little. "Lily's all I've got." Daniel nodded. "I understand. Life doesn't always give you much, but sometimes it gives you people worth holding on to." When they reached the cabin, Daniel lit the fire and brought them blankets. Lily woke up, amazed by the cozy little place. She sat by the fire, warming her hands, and soon started humming softly. Clara watched her, tears glistening in her eyes. "She's been through so much," she whispered. "I promised her I'd keep her safe, even if I had to sleep under bridges." Daniel didn't say anything. He just brought them both a cup of warm milk and sat nearby. The crackling fire filled the silence between them, After a while, Lily yawned and fell asleep on the couch. Clara smiled sadly. She talks a lot sometimes, but she means well. What she said back there, please don't take it seriously. Daniel chuckled quietly. Don't worry. I knew she meant it in the purest way. She's a sweet kid. Clara looked down, brushing a tear away. Sweet, but too honest sometimes. The night grew quiet again. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but inside, the firelight made everything warm and golden. Daniel leaned back, lost in thought. He didn't know why he had offered to help them. Maybe it was because he saw something in Clara's eyes, a kind of strength that came from surviving too much too soon. Or maybe it was because Lily reminded him of the daughter he never had. Clara whispered softly, "You must think we're just trouble." Daniel shook his head. "No. I think you're just people trying to make it through the cold. Everyone needs someone sometimes." Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet understanding born from loneliness and kindness. Later, Daniel gave up his bed for the sisters and slept by the fire. The sound of the wind outside was softer now. Before closing his eyes, he heard Lily murmur sleepily, "He'll take care of us, I know it." Daniel smiled faintly in the dark. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, his road had led him somewhere worth stopping. The morning sun came through the window and painted the small cabin in warm light. Daniel woke up slowly, stretching his sore back from sleeping by the fire. The smell of something cooking made him sit up. He looked toward the kitchen and saw Clara standing there, her hair tied loosely, wearing one of his old shirts over her dress. She was making breakfast quietly, trying not to wake him. Lily was already awake, sitting near the window with a cup of milk, humming softly as she drew something on a piece of paper. When she saw Daniel open his eyes, she smiled wide and waved. "Good morning, mister. You snore like a bear." Daniel chuckled and rubbed his eyes. "Do I now? Guess I owe you an apology for that." Clara turned, a little embarrassed. "I hope you don't mind. I wanted to thank you for last night, so I made some eggs and bread. It's not much, but it's more than enough," Daniel said kindly, getting up. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she replied softly, placing plates on the table. "You helped us when no one else did." They ate together quietly at first. The cabin felt warmer, brighter, even though nothing had really changed. Daniel couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked in his kitchen. Lily kept talking between bites, telling stories about how she and her sister used to live near the river, how they picked wildflowers, and how Clara always made her laugh. Clara just smiled, listening as her little sister's laughter filled the cabin. After breakfast, Daniel went outside to chop some wood. The air was crisp and the trees were covered with frost. As he swung the axe, he saw Clara step outside, wrapping her shawl tighter. She watched him for a moment before speaking. "You really live alone out here?" He nodded. "Been that way for a long time. Easier that way, I thought, but I guess I forgot what it feels like to have company." Clara smiled faintly. "Sometimes we get used to being alone because it hurts less. But it's not living. It's just surviving." Daniel paused, leaning on the axe handle. Her words hit deeper than he expected. "You sound like someone who's had to be strong for too long." She looked down, her eyes glistening in the cold morning light. "After our parents died, I didn't have a choice. I had to take care of Lily. She's all I have. Every town we go to, people look at us with pity or suspicion. I try to find work, but they don't trust strangers. I just want a place where she can sleep safely." Daniel's voice softened. "You both deserve better than that." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun climb higher over the trees. Lily came running out, holding her little drawing in her hand. "Look," she shouted proudly. "I drew us!" "That's you, mister, with your big hat. And that's my sister and me." We're all smiling. Daniel knelt down to look at the picture. The lines were uneven, the faces simple, but there was something pure in it. "That's beautiful, Lily. You're quite the artist," she giggled. "It's for you, so you don't forget us when we leave." Clara's face changed a little at that word. "Leave." Daniel looked at her quietly. "Where will you go?" She sighed. "I don't know yet. Maybe south. There might be work there." "I can't let you keep feeding us," Daniel shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. But I can't let you wander off with that little one in this cold either." Clara hesitated. "We've already taken too much from you." Daniel looked at her gently. "You've given me something back too. I didn't realize how lonely this place had gotten until last night." Maybe you could stay a little longer, until you find something steady. Lily's face lit up. Can we, Clara? Please, I like it here. It's warm and there's a big field to play in. Clara looked at Daniel unsure. He smiled faintly. Just a few days. That's all I'm offering. She finally nodded. All right. Just a few days. Those few days turned into a week. Daniel found small chores around the cabin that Clara could help with. She cleaned, cooked, and even mended his old clothes. Lily followed Daniel everywhere, asking endless questions about tools, animals, and the stars. Daniel didn't mind. He liked the sound of her voice and the laughter that came with it. One evening, as they all sat by the fire, Lily looked at Daniel seriously. Mister, did you ever have a family? Daniel stared into the flames for a while before answering. Once, a long time ago. My wife passed away young. We didn't have children. Clara looked down, her voice quiet. I'm sorry. Daniel shook his head. It's all right. I stopped talking about it years ago. But somehow, since you two came here, it doesn't hurt as much anymore. Lily leaned against him. Then maybe God sent us to make you smile again. Clara tried to hush her, but Daniel only smiled. Maybe he did, little one. Days passed, and the small cabin started to feel like a home again. Daniel fixed the roof. Clara planted herbs by the window, and Lily played in the yard, her laughter echoing through the trees. The loneliness that once hung heavy in Daniel's heart slowly faded away. One afternoon, a man from town stopped by, bringing supplies Daniel had ordered. When he saw Clara and Lily, he raised an eyebrow. Didn't think you were the family type, Daniel, he joked. Daniel just smiled and said, Maybe I just hadn't met the right company before. But not everyone in town was kind. A few days later, Clara went into town to ask about work, and some people whispered behind her back, wondering who she was and why she was living with Daniel. When she returned, she looked hurt. Daniel noticed right away. What happened? He asked gently. Nothing, she said quickly. Just people talking. Let them talk, Daniel said firmly. You don't owe anyone an explanation. That night, Clara sat by the fire, watching Lily sleep. She turned to Daniel, her voice trembling. You don't have to do this for us. You've already done more than anyone ever has. Daniel looked at her, his eyes soft. Clara, you and your sister aren't a burden. This house feels alive again because of you two. Maybe it's time I stopped running from things I lost and started protecting what I found. She blinked back tears, whispering, You don't mean that. I do, he said quietly, and I think Lily was right that night at the diner. Clara looked confused. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. She said you were perfect for me. Maybe she saw something we didn't. Clara's eyes filled with emotion. She turned away, hiding her tears. You've got a kind heart, Daniel. The following morning, Daniel went into town early and returned with a surprise. He brought paint nails and new curtains for the windows. He told Clara, If you're going to stay here, it should feel like your home too. Clara's hands trembled as she touched the soft fabric. Are you sure about this? He nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. Weeks later, people in town stopped whispering. They began seeing the three of them together, Daniel, Clara, and little Lily, shopping for supplies, laughing by the wagon, and walking through the fields. Daniel built a small swing outside for Lily, who would laugh for hours as Clara watched from the porch. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Lily ran to Daniel and hugged him tight. See, I told you you'd take care of us both, she said with a giggle. Daniel looked at Clara, who stood quietly with tears in her eyes. He smiled softly and said, Yes, you did, Lily, and I'm not letting go of either of you. The wind carried the scent of pine through the air, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt peace. Not the quiet kind that comes from being alone, but the warm kind that comes from belonging. The man who once lived with silence had found laughter again, and the two sisters who had nowhere to go had finally found a home. And from that day on, whenever people passed by his cabin, they would always see the same picture, smoke rising gently from the chimney, a man chopping wood with a little girl playing nearby, and a woman standing by the porch smiling softly, as if life had finally remembered to be kind.